Welcome to True Echo, where real moments meet unforgettable truths. Today's story isn't just about a single kick, it's about ego, silence, and what happens when a man tries to prove his strength in front of the world, and ends up learning what true strength really means. This is the story of a black belt, a royal guard, and the quiet power that changed everything. To the tourists gathered outside St. James's Palace that morning, it looked like another cultural showcase. Cameras clicked, kids pointed, and martial artists from around the world stood in white uniforms, bowing and nodding in preparation for a respectful, light-hearted demonstration. But Brandon Mercer wasn't there for peace. He stood among the line of demonstrators with his jaw clenched just a little too tight, his short buzzed hair slicked from sweat, and his eyes fixed on one man, Lieutenant Jabari Okoro. Brandon looked confident to the crowd, but inside, he was a volcano of need, boiling over with years of frustration. Back in Toledo, he'd grown up overlooked, his dad ran a tire shop, his mom worked nights at a care home. They were honest people. But Brandon had learned early that no one noticed him unless he caused trouble. So, he became loud, brash, physical. Martial arts had given him a framework, but not peace. It had made people clap when he won, but the silence in his soul never really left. At 30, his dojo sat wedged between a vape shop and a failing tax office. Most of his students were either kids or midlife crisis men chasing lost glory. His trophies? Dusty. His followers? Sparse. And when he scrolled late at night through clips of martial arts around the world, he saw something that made his fists curl tighter. He saw Jabari. A ceremonial guard. Still. Unshaken. Eyes focused like steel. It wasn't the punch Jabari threw, it was the calm. The power in his silence. The way he held space without force. Brandon hated how much that unnerved him. So, when he heard Jabari would appear at a ceremonial demonstration, Brandon pulled every string he could to get on the list. He didn't want peace. He wanted presence. And he was going to take it. The event began like any other. Ceremonial. Quiet. Controlled. Until Brandon stepped forward and nodded that he would go first. Jabari met him on the mat. They bowed. Brandon's was tight and quick. Jabari's was full, rooted in something older than the both of them. The match began. 2 exchanges. Light moves. Then Brandon shifted. 1 step, 1 pivot, and then. Crack. His spinning heel kick landed square on Jabari's jaw. Gasps. Jabari staggered 2 steps, not from force, but from shock. His gloved hand touched his cheek. He straightened his spine. Smoothed his hat. And walked off. No words. No retaliation. Just silence. And that silence spoke louder than any crowd ever could. The moment Jabari left the mat, the atmosphere collapsed. There was no applause, just a brittle silence stretching through the crowd. One by one, people lowered their phones, unsure whether to keep recording or put them away in awkward guilt. Brandon stood in place, trying to smile, but even he knew the energy had turned cold. His hands were trembling, not from adrenaline, but from something closer to shame. He had wanted to be remembered. Mission accomplished. But not the way he had imagined. Within minutes, the demonstration was cancelled for logistical reasons. That was the official line. Off to the side, guards whispered to one another. Organizers avoided eye contact. Brandon packed his gear in silence, ignoring the stares boring into him like knives. By the time he reached his hotel room, the first video clip had already hit social media. A slow-motion loop of his spinning kick, Jabari's stumble, and the quiet walk away. No context. No commentary. Just a moment frozen in digital amber. Then came the captions. Martial arts or ego? Black belt tries to embarrass royal guard. Watch this soldier eat a kick and still walk away like a king. Brandon refreshed the page. And again. His face was everywhere. At first, he laughed. Yo, I went viral, he told himself. Then he scrolled deeper. The laughter dried up. This ain't martial arts. This is ego dressed in a GI. Guy wanted attention. He got it. Hope he enjoys the cost. That guard's silence. Way louder than any kick. Even some of Brandon's former tournament friends chimed in. One posted, "Control is strength." Mercer forgot that. That one cut deep. Across the city, in a modest room inside the guard house, Jabari sat quietly. His cheek tingled, but the bruise hadn't surfaced yet. A commanding officer had already visited him with a formal decision. He was to be pulled from ceremonial rotation until further notice, not as punishment, just for optics. The incident was too visible. It made the guard look weak. Or so the higher-ups believed. Jabari didn't protest. He simply nodded. Later that night, he called his mother. She didn't ask if he was okay, she just listened. What happened, she finally asked. He paused. Just got reminded who I am. He didn't explain what that meant. Not to her. Not to anyone. Because he knew the truth was complicated. He hadn't lost control. He hadn't failed to defend himself. What he'd done was harder. He had chosen not to retaliate. And that choice would echo further than any punch Brandon could ever throw. 3 days after the incident, Brandon sat alone in his dojo. Lights dim. Mats clean. Chairs empty. The Thursday night class, once his most popular, had only 2 students left. One was a quiet teenager who kept his eyes down. The other was an older man nursing a stiff knee and more nostalgia than motivation. Brandon ran the warm-ups like usual, counting out reps with mechanical rhythm. But he wasn't present. Not really. His mind was still stuck in London. Still hearing the crack of the kick. Still seeing the look on Jabari's face, calm, unshaken, unreadable. That silence had gotten under his skin like a splinter that wouldn't work its way out. That night, he went home and turned on his phone. Big mistake. A jiu-jitsu coach in Arizona had uploaded a video titled, "When Skill Meets Ego, Why Control is Everything." It was a full breakdown of the footage. Frame by frame, the coach narrated the moment. He didn't mock Brandon directly, but his voice was calm and cutting. "This isn't about technique," the coach said. "It's about character. Martial arts doesn't begin when the bell rings. It begins in the silence before you act." Brandon watched the whole thing. He didn't blink once. By the time the coach finished, the video had over 200,000 views and was being re-uploaded with commentary by other fighters, cultural critics, even veterans. One Taekwondo master from Seoul simply said, "Ceremony is sacred." Mercer turned it into a stage. Emails began arriving that same night. Local sponsors pulled out. A self-defense group paused their contract with him. A mother messaged to say her child wouldn't be returning to class. "He's confused," she wrote. "He thought martial arts was about restraint." Brandon didn't reply. He sat in the dark, watching his reflection in the studio mirror. What stared back wasn't a fighter. Not anymore. It was a man caught in the echo of his own mistake. Meanwhile, Jabari had shifted into a new rhythm. No more guard duty. No more cameras. No more tourists snapping photos of him in red tunic and bearskin hat. Now he filed reports, double-checked rotation logs, and blended in. Civilian clothes. Quiet halls. He liked the stillness, but he couldn't ignore the shift in how people looked at him, like he was both a symbol and a cautionary tale. One afternoon, while sipping coffee in the break room, a captain pulled up a chair beside him. "You all right?" the man asked. Jabari nodded. "I'm good." The captain tilted his head. Didn't think you'd take it like this. Like what? Quiet. No media, no rebuttal, no drama. Jabari shrugged. It's not my story to clean up. The captain leaned forward. Maybe not. But people are watching. Some of them need to know what strength really looks like. Jabari said nothing. But that night, he opened the Notes app on his phone and wrote something simple. Real strength isn't silence. It's the decision not to make noise just to be heard. Some moments are loud. Some are sacred. Control means knowing the difference. No hashtags. No video. Just words. He posted it. By morning, it had been shared by coaches, teachers, even a few military accounts. One boxing gym in Philly pinned it on their wall. Another instructor read it aloud to her class before bowing in. Brandon saw the post, too. He read it 3 times. He didn't click like. He didn't comment. But he didn't sleep that night either. The dojo felt colder that week, not because of the weather, but because of what lingered in the air. Brandon went through the motions, mopped the mats, reset the gear, nodded politely to the few students who still showed up. But inside, he was spiraling. He opened his phone, typed out a message to Jabari. Deleted it. Tried again. Didn't mean for it to go that way. Delete. It wasn't personal. Delete. Each time he typed, the words felt like lies. The truth was uglier. Brandon had meant every inch of that kick. He had meant to take something from Jabari, his calm, his stillness, the very respect Brandon thought he deserved. But the only thing he stole was his own dignity. 1 week after the demonstration, Brandon found himself outside a nondescript brick building in Camden, London. A converted garage behind a chicken shop, no flashy signs, no influencer dojo gimmicks, just mats, sweat, and quiet respect. This was Camden Martial Arts Collective. Word was Jabari trained there sometimes. Brandon didn't call. He didn't message. He just walked in and leaned against the far wall. A few fighters glanced up, nodded without recognition. No one mentioned the video. No one needed to. It was like the room had collectively agreed to judge him by what he did next, not what he had done. Then the back door opened. Jabari stepped in, hoodie, sweatpants, duffel bag slung casually over one shoulder. His gaze swept the room, then locked on Brandon. A long beat passed. Brandon stood. The room went still. Jabari didn't flinch. Brandon swallowed. His voice was low. I shouldn't have done it. Jabari tilted his head. Which part? Brandon's eyes dropped. The kick. The intent. All of it. Jabari's expression didn't change, but his words cut clean. You didn't train to control your need, did you? Brandon shook his head. No. I just wanted to be seen. You were, Jabari said. Just not the way you hoped. Brandon nodded. I'm not here to fight. I know, Jabari replied. You're here to learn. He gestured toward the mat. You're here, might as well move. Brandon hesitated, then stepped forward. They warmed up side by side. Not sparring, just breathing, drilling, moving. A dance of mutual awareness. Brandon kept it light. Jabari returned every motion with precision, grace, and something else, patience. 30 minutes later, they bowed. Brandon collapsed against the wall, drenched in sweat. Jabari crouched beside him. You ever feel like you don't know who you are without the applause? Brandon asked. Jabari took a moment. I used to, he said. Then I realized applause is just noise. Purpose is quiet. Brandon let that sit for a while. What happens now? He asked. Jabari stood. That depends on what you do when no one's watching. Then he walked away. No ceremony. No handshake photo. Just a man who didn't need to win the moment, because he'd already won his piece. Brandon didn't post about it. Didn't spin it into a comeback. He just went back to his dojo the next day, and again the day after that. The students who remained noticed something different. He taught slower, asked more questions, and for the first time in a long time, listened. The fire inside him hadn't gone out. It had simply changed direction. 3 weeks passed. The world had moved on, at least, most of it. The trending clips faded into new dramas. Social feeds chased fresh outrage. But for Brandon Mercer, the real transformation had only just begun. His dojo, once a shrine to his ego, now felt like sacred ground. He scrubbed the floors himself every morning. He didn't just demonstrate moves, he explained them with care. When a student hesitated, he didn't snap or show off. He adjusted, listened, taught. And slowly, something changed. Not in the world, but in him. Then one Friday afternoon, Brandon received a message. It wasn't from Jabari. It wasn't from any committee, sponsor, or critic. It was from a mother who had pulled her son from class after the incident. "I saw your recent video. Not the old one, the new one. The quiet one. The way you spoke to that boy about respect. My son watched it. He wants to come back. I think you've changed. I hope you have." Brandon read it 3 times. The video she was talking about was an unlisted one, something a parent had recorded during a small class. It showed Brandon kneeling beside a nervous child, explaining that strength wasn't about hitting first, it was about choosing when not to hit at all. He hadn't posted it. He hadn't even known it existed. That weekend, the boy returned. So did 2 others. Slowly, the room began to fill, not with applause, but with presence. With trust. But the real closure came not in a dojo, not on a mat, but back in the heart of London, just steps away from the place where it all began. The guards were back. Ceremonial rotation resumed at St. James's Palace. Tourists gathered, snapping photos of red tunics and tall black hats. The tradition carried on, unbroken. And there, marching in synchronized rhythm, posture like steel, chin high, was Lieutenant Jabari Okoro. No fanfare. No press. Just duty. In the crowd, behind a group of tourists holding Union Jack umbrellas, stood Brandon. He wasn't up front. He didn't record. He didn't even move much. He just watched. And when Jabari completed his rotation and returned through the side gate, their eyes met for a brief second. No nod. No words. Just understanding. A silent recognition that sometimes, the loudest apologies are the ones you live, day after day. That night, Brandon didn't go out. He didn't celebrate. He didn't even tell anyone he'd seen Jabari return to ceremonial duty. He walked the long way back to his rented flat, hands in his pockets, hood up. The London wind bit at his ears, but inside, he felt something warm settling into his chest. He had come to the city looking to make a statement, and he had. Just not the one he intended. Back in Toledo a week later, the dojo was quiet again, but in a different way. It wasn't empty. It wasn't cold. It was focused. There was a new kind of stillness in the room. The kind that made students look inward before they ever threw a punch. Brandon taught differently now. He spent longer on the why than the how. He showed his students how to breathe, how to stand with intent, how to listen to the energy in a room before reacting. One parent called it meditative. Another said it felt real. Brandon didn't care what they called it. He only cared that it was honest. Then came a moment he didn't expect. After class one Thursday evening, one of his youngest students, an 11-year-old named Kato, stayed behind. His GI was too big. His belt crooked. But his eyes were sharp. Sensei, the boy asked quietly, what happens if someone hits you first? Brandon paused. That question used to be easy. You counter. You strike. You win. But now, he understood what Jabari had meant. He looked the boy in the eyes. Then you decide, Brandon said, if you want to win a moment or live with yourself afterward. Kato nodded, like he understood, even if he didn't. Not yet. But one day, he would. That night, Brandon locked up the dojo alone. The street outside was quiet. The hum of traffic in the distance. Fluorescent lights flickering above the strip mall. He sat down on the mat barefoot, facing the mirror. No posing. No flexing. Just silence. And for once, he was okay with it. Weeks turned into months. The story of the kick had long since faded from public memory, just another viral moment buried under newer noise. But for Brandon Mercer, the consequences never disappeared. They reshaped him. He never went fully viral again. There were no more sponsors, no flashy collaborations, no reality show invites or influencer deals. And for the first time in his adult life, he didn't want them. He had something better. Purpose. At Camden Martial Arts Collective, they still told the story sometimes, about the American who walked in without asking and left his ego on the mat. Some versions were harsher than others, but Jabari never corrected them. He didn't need to. Because the real lesson wasn't about the kick. It was about what came after. On one of Jabari's rest days, he returned to the same dojo. Brandon wasn't there, he was back in the States, but someone had hung a short quote on the wall, printed on plain white paper, taped just above the water cooler. Strength isn't what you do when people are watching. It's what you carry when they aren't. No signature. No name. But Jabari knew. He bowed to it. Meanwhile, in Toledo, Brandon's dojo wasn't packed, but it was steady. The students who came weren't looking to become fighters, they were learning to become better people. Every Friday, Brandon sat with his students after class. No sparring. No drills. Just a circle. Talking about fear, anger, control. Real things. One night, a teenage girl named Soraya raised her hand. Sensei, she asked, did you ever do something in front of people that you regret? Brandon blinked. For the first time, he didn't deflect. He told them the story. Not the viral version. Not the headline. The real one. He told them about London. About the kick. About Jabari. About silence, consequence, and the difference between wanting to be seen and being worthy of it. When he finished, no one clapped. No one said anything. But the silence in that room was different than the one outside St. James's Palace. This silence was full. Deep. Respectful. Later, as the students filed out, one lingered behind. You ever talk to that guy again? The guard? Brandon smiled faintly. Once, he said. But we didn't need to speak. The student nodded like that made perfect sense. That night, Brandon turned off the lights, stood alone in the center of the dojo, and bowed, not to a crowd, not to a memory, but to the man he used to be. And the one he was finally becoming. What makes a fighter great isn't how hard they hit. It's how deeply they reflect. Brandon came to London chasing applause and left with something far more valuable, humility, purpose, and a lesson that silence, when chosen with strength, can echo longer than any punch. Remember, real strength isn't loud. It's consistent. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more true and powerful echoes of the human spirit. Drop your thoughts in the comments, your voice matters. And remember, at True Echo, we don't just tell stories. We reveal character.